But at this point, I really think that, you need to have a human person advising you. Like, as I said, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a financial advisor, a CPA, you want someone who really, that you trust, who has the experience and the expertise and can guide you and can say, look.
Hi, guys. Welcome to the Mortgages Made Easy podcast. I am joined today by Sonia Margalef, who is a fabulous realtor. She works in the Short Hills office of Compass, and she was recently uh, honored as one of the top 1.5% realtors in the country by Real Trends. And we've known each other now for a couple of years, and I can tell you that I think you're one of the top realtors in the country. And I know a lot of
Thank
realtors.
you. Thank you.
So let's start a little bit just talking about your footprint. You're a realtor. I know you're in Short Hills, but what's your geography? The geography that you personally serve?
Yeah. Hi, thank you. And thank you so much, Dave, for having me on your podcast. I'm very honored to be here today. So, yes, so what's my footprint? I serve pretty much three counties for the most part: Union, Morris, and Essex counties. They are in northern New Jersey. I sometimes go a little bit outside that zone, depending on, if there is a need, if my clients need me there. But typically, I like to concentrate or focus my attention and my area to those counties because I feel this is where my expertise is. And I feel that I would not be doing, or I would be doing a disservice to my clients if I were to, help them in Princeton or down the shore. I mean, New Jersey is a very big state. And so I really know where I have the most expertise, and that's why I picked those three counties, because that's really where most of the towns are that I know about and that I do a lot of business in.
Yeah. And to be clear, like other realtors, if you had a referral down at the shore, in fact, you and I are working to help one client right now, and that client is looking to buy in near Ocean County. And so you referred him to some of your associates down there who are taking great care of him. So
Correct.
the fact that you aren't necessarily working the entire state, much less the entire universe, doesn't mean that you can't help people along the way
Oh, yeah, no.
as a okay.
Yeah,
So
no, absolutely. And not only New Jersey, Dave, by the way, it's really across the country. Very often I have clients who want to leave New Jersey, want to go to Florida or California or, you name it. And that's when I can go and tap into my network of trusted agents, colleagues, professionals that I have known for a long time. And I know that they will be taking care of my clients.
so what I thought we would focus on over the next 10, 20 minutes is talking about something that you and I encounter quite a bit, and that is clients who are buyers and they're trying to buy houses in, let's call it northern New Jersey. But it's true really beyond that, right? Because I get that in places in New York, I get that in uh, Florida. It really is, it's not a national phenomenon, but nevertheless, in some markets, you have what's called a seller's market. So why don't we start by defining that? Sonia, what's a seller's market?
Very good question because everybody talks about it: sellers market, buyers market. So yes, you're absolutely right. Right now, in most parts of New Jersey, we are seeing a sellers market, which has been we seen it for a while now, for quite a while. And what defines it is really it's basically the amount of houses or inventory available for sale compared to the amount of houses that go under contract within a 30-day period. So that pretty much what we call in real estate, and I don't want to bore you with any technical terms, but we're looking at absorption rates. And it's basically how quickly the buyer market is absorbing all this inventory. So typically we look at it, we even can quantify that. We say between 1 and 5 or 6, that, or I would say, yeah, so 1 to 5, it's kind of like a seller's market. Of course, the lower the number, the stronger the seller's market is. 5 to 6, it's kind of like a balanced market. It's neither sellers nor buyers market. And 6, 7 to 10 plus, that would be a buyer's market. We
Well,
really haven't seen. Yeah.
let's just call it in a very simple way for people who are listening. If there are more buyers than there are homes for sale, you're
Yes.
in a seller's market. If there are more homes for sale than there are
Correct.
buyers, you're in a buyer's market.
Correct.
What's the difference? Why would I care if I'm in a buyer's market? I'm buying a house. I'm coming to you to sell me a house. Help me find a house. Why do I care if it's a buyer's market or a seller's market?
Well, you can imagine it's supply and demand, right? So if there is a high supply, or let's say if there is a low supply of houses, but there are a lot of buyers looking to purchase a house, you can imagine what happens, right? Prices go up because there is a lot of competition, a lot of buyers all fighting to get that one house. And that's really what, when we talk about sellers market, that's really what it is. It's that high demand for houses, and not really having enough houses to, for all the buyers that are out there.
Mhm. And so let's talk about um, what happens. Uh, I find the house that I like, it's priced at 850 is how it goes out to market. And I show up there on a Sunday morning with you, and their car's out to the main road. What does that tell us?
What, when there is a house.
And their cars lined up out to the main road.
Oh, that there are cars lined up. Yeah, I mean, that already tells you that, that house is hot, because of course traffic is usually one of the parameters that we're looking at. What kind of traffic do we get during open houses? What kind of traction is that listing attracting? And of course, when you see like a whole line of buyers waiting to go into the open house, or cars lining up, that tells you already that that's going to be a very, very hot house. Maybe it's because it's beautiful and the price is right. That usually is the case. That's when houses have that kind of a, or generate that kind of a reaction.
Hmm. Now, I will tell you, I was at an open house probably about 2 weeks ago, and there
Yeah,
were a lot of people who came through the house, and yet there was not an offer that was competitive. And
interesting.
so, and so even though you're walking into a house and you're seeing a lot of traffic, that doesn't necessarily mean
Correct.
that you should give up.
Correct.
So
Correct.
now
No, no,
let's
you're
talk
right.
about that $850,000 house. And you and I have a client for whom 850 is a sweet spot. And what happened with him? Do you remember a couple of weeks ago, he walked into a house, there was an 850 purchase price. I don't
Yeah.
even know if I ever heard what the final sale price was on that house.
Well, that house has not closed yet.
Oh, okay.
That house has not closed. We submitted our offer. Oh God, there were many, many offers submitted on that particular house. I believe, oh God, it was a lot. It was like 15 plus offers. But yeah, no, unfortunately, we did not get the house. as expected, because we anticipated that house was going to go well over our client's budget. And so we kind of knew going in that that was not going to
Hmm.
be, a successful bid, but we still went ahead. We submitted because sometimes you never know, right? You never
Right.
know. But yeah, that was
So
crazy.
one of the things that I like talking about with my clients, and I'm sure you've been there as well, is what does the l- listing price represent? So, if somebody puts a house out at 850, what does that number represent?
Well, it can represent many things to different people, right? So to a seller, it depends because sometimes to a seller that price, I mean, could be their dream price, or could be
Aspirational,
an
right?
aspirational price. Correct. Sometimes it could be an aggressive price, meaning that you could probably price the house a little bit higher, but you're not going to do that because strategically speaking, you would like to generate offers. You would like to generate a lot of interest and momentum, and that could be a reason. So, there are different ways of pricing a house. My recommendation always when I work with my sellers is, let's be strategic. Let's really look at the house. Let's look at similar recent sales that have been that have happened in the last couple of months. But also let's look at the unique features that the house has. Let's look at the location. Let's see, is the house lacking anything that a buyer today is looking for. For example, a big, a big, how do, I'm trying to think, objection, a big objection, and that's oftentimes, will stop someone from making an offer on a house is, for example, if the house does not have a backyard. If it's a house with a very small backyard and all that there is a front yard and maybe a side yard, and for a lot of people, especially those who have smaller children, they would like to have a backyard so they can play, they can have fun, entertain. That could be. So when I go in and I price a specific property, I will take all of that into account. I'll take into account, what's the location? Is it, on a residential street where there is only trees and it's beautiful and quiet and really nice? Or is it right on the main road, where there is, a crossing, a four-way crossing just a couple hundred feet away? I'll take that into account. So the location, I'll take into account if it's lacking anything, or if it exceeds what a typical buyer today is looking for. Maybe it has more bathrooms than the typical house in that neighborhood. That's a plus, right?
Hmm.
And then the size also, we have to take that into account. So there is a lot of thought and analysis and strategy that goes into pricing a house the right way, because every house, as you can imagine, of course, is unique, and every house has its own price. So yeah, so list price, back to your question, I think that you know for a buyer sees the list price, and when they hear, oh, there is going to be probably a multiple bid situation, they know that that price is not most likely. They will have to bid over that price if they want to get the house. That
Right.
is not always the case, sometimes, but typically that's
So,
what's expected.
yeah, it's um, one of the things that I try to tell my clients is that you have to develop a mental map that tells you what this house is worth to you.
Yes.
And let's just go back to your case of the house that's right near the four-way intersection and maybe on a busy street.
Yeah.
And for 90% of all buyers, that's a bad thing, right?
Yeah, every buyer is different. I've
But if
had.
you have a buyer who's a physician and they've got to make it to the hospital, regardless of whether there's snow or not, being that close to the main street may be an advantage. And so I look at it and say, look at once you've seen two or three houses, and you know what they've sold for, and um, I say, figure out what it's worth to you. What's this
Absolutely.
house worth to you? You know,
Absolutely.
is the fact that it's proximate to that main street and therefore you can almost always get out in the snow, is that a value? Well, then you want to think about that. Or is it close to the park? Is it far from
Yes.
the park? Is it, what
Absolutely.
are the features and what is that feature to you? A couple maybe without children might be very different than a couple with children in the way they value, let's say, certain things. So
Correct.
the fitness
Correct.
buff would value a fitness trail more than necessarily
Correct.
a park with a
Correct.
playground.
Yeah.
So look at that from a broader
Yeah.
perspective and come up with an individual price of what is worth to you. So now we have our client. The house is listing at 850. You know it's going to be multiple bid. Where do we go from there? What's the conversation?
Well, the conversation that I have with my buyers, if they say, "Hey, you know what? We really love the house. We would like to submit an offer, and hopefully get the house." What I will do, first thing I do is I like to touch base with the agent, with the listing agent. I like to really understand um, everything about the house. I'll call the agent and I'll say, hey, I see all of these. I have some questions. Do you have a minute for me so I can go over my questions and also my client's questions, something that, is not quite clear. So just kind of clarify a little bit about, the property if something is not quite clear. And then, yeah, and then get a sense as to what the agent anticipates. If the agent is saying, you know what, the sellers are not going to look at any offers. They're probably going to wait until after the open house. So I can go back to my clients and let them know, look, that's the situation right now. How do you want to, proceed? What do you want to do? So it's really, it's a very strategic discussion that I'm going to have with them once they tell me that that's the house that they would like to bid on. And
Mhm.
then, we're going to be looking at market stats. We're going to be looking at, different data points where I can kind of, help them guide that discussion. Because the first thing that they'll ask me is, how much would you offer for this house? And I'm like, I'm not the kind of person or a realtor that kind of takes a number out of the hat. I like to really look at the numbers and the data. Although I have to say also that oftentimes, especially in the market we're in right now, it only takes someone who's willing and able, as you know, to just offer any price they want. And that's pretty much it. I mean, sometimes that's what it is. But, I like to really be guided by the market, what the market says, especially the more recent sales, maybe just going back 3 to 6 months max, and looking at what we see has been happening in the market, of course. And that's why, again, it's important to know the market. Real estate is so hyper local, and that's the reason why, of all of New Jersey, I only want to serve very specific areas because of that, because I really want to make sure that I know all the markets that I am active in.
Mm. So let's talk about the let's talk about the offer. How do you take an offer and optimize it so that if there are two offers at the same price, your offer is going to win?
That's a great question because, as you know, in a multiple bid situation, you don't know who you're bidding against, right? You have no idea. But in my experience, I do use a couple of things, especially when I advise my client. I try to, number one, I educate them. I like for them to know that when they're going in and making an offer, there are certain risks sometimes that they need to be aware of. For example, if the house doesn't appraise, what happens then? Am I losing my deposit? Do I have to pay? Am I on the hook? So, I like to educate all of my clients as to, potential risks that we might encounter with when we decide to make an offer and include some of these key elements. So that's important. Another thing that I do is, again, what I mentioned before about, helping them strategize and what are some of the things that in my experience have been very successful in getting me an offer. For example, one of the things depends, again, it really depends on the property, depends on the sellers. But if I know that that particular seller is still looking for a house, they have not found a house, they would prefer, or for whatever reason they cannot do a quick closing, they would prefer a much longer closing, maybe a 60-day closing, or even longer, or maybe 90-day closing. One of the things I have done very successfully is offer what we call a use and occupancy agreement, whereby the sellers after closing are allowed to stay in their house, no longer theirs, but still they can still stay there for up to 2 months, to kind of give them a little bit of extra time so that they have less stress, and to make the transaction a lot more, a lot smoother and better for those sellers. So that has helped me in the
Mm,
past,
yeah.
to offer that.
One of the things that has been successful for me is um, often we can do pre-approvals that are very strong. And I will sometimes, and you and I've had this conversation,
Yeah.
I will sometimes call, with everyone's permission, call the seller's realtor and tell them how strong my buyer is. There are times, especially if our client's putting down, let's say, 20 or 25%, and the purchase price is $1 million or less, there are times that we can turn around a commitment in days. And particularly, and we don't know this in advance, but particularly if we get an appraisal waiver. So if we get an appraisal waiver, which means that our
Yeah.
lender will do the loan without having a property appraisal. What
Wow.
that means is that the moment I get not a full contract, but just a letter saying that the offer has been accepted, that I can submit that loan to my lender with that letter, and sometimes 24 to 48 hours later, which is way before the contract goes through what's called attorney review in New Jersey.
Right.
But while it's still percolating, while they're still negotiating the details, we might have a full approval. And again, if there's no appraisal on it,
Right.
then that approval is cast iron.
Absolutely.
And,
Absolutely. No,
and
you're
sometimes
absolutely
that will even beat a cash offer. Because at that point, if you can eliminate the risk factors to the seller of the mortgage, there's no advantage to a cash offer.
Yes, yes. The only thing is the timing. By the time the sellers sit down and review offers in a multiple bid situation, and your offer is a mortgage contingent offer, that commitment is not available yet. It will come, like you said, in a few days later. But at the time that they are reviewing the offers, if there is a cash offer that is very attractive and, you know, kind of removes that kind of a contingency. It removes two contingencies, right? It removes on the one hand the mortgage contingency and also the appraisal contingency.
Yeah.
So once those two are removed, there is really not that much left. I mean, you still have to do your inspections and all these things, but of course, as they always say, right, cash is king. But to your point, definitely, again, I like to, when I present an offer, I put together a really good package where it's the price, it's the terms, it's really reassuring that seller that the buyer that I'm presenting and the offer I'm presenting is solid and committed. Those buyers are committed, serious buyers, willing and able to buy the house, and that we're going to make it all the way, to the closing table.
Mm.
That's really what it comes down to.
One feature that I like talking about is what I call the dream team. And what I
Mm,
mean by the dream team
yes,
is if your buyer walks into the offer and they already have an attorney selected, and they have an insurance broker selected, and they have an inspector selected, and you have the whole team all lined up, that makes it very strong because you can tell the seller, we're not playing games here. We're ready to close, especially if you're in a rush. We're ready to close, and we may be ready to
correct,
close faster than that cash offer because
correct,
we've got the team in place. You tell us how fast you want to move, and we're there.
correct. Correct. Yeah. I mean, absolutely. The to have a dream team is really the key to success for all of us. And it's important, at the end, I find at the end of the day, it really comes down to trust, to those buyers trusting me and trusting you and trusting, the team that we put together for them, between the inspector and the attorney. Especially those are the main ones: the inspector, the attorney, and the lender. Those are my three ones, top ones. And of course, title is also very
Yeah.
important. Yeah.
The other thing that's critical from a lender standpoint, and I just had this last week.
Yeah.
I had a young man call me. He wanted to buy a house. He owns his house now, and he wanted to trade up to the next level. Well, when we looked at his finances, what we were finding was that he was not saving a dollar.
Mm, that's a problem.
Now, and what was happening was I could have gotten him approved. Well, let's say his current house is 800,000. I could have easily got him approved for a mortgage on a house worth 1,200,000, but he couldn't afford it. And that's what I would urge our listeners to pay
Yeah.
attention to carefully. There's two issues. What can you get approved for and what can you afford? And by the way, when you look at that,
Mm,
and I bet you'll resonate with this right away, there might be two neighboring towns. One town is a high tax town, and one town is a low tax town. And the carrying costs on houses that are priced identically might be $1,000 or more
yes.
different a month based on just the taxes.
Hmm.
And so look at affordability very carefully. Make
Absolutely.
sure that your team is focused on not what you pay, that's one aspect of it, but your total affordability. Can you afford this house? If you can just get a sense of based on, let's say, the utilities in the house, is it gas, is it oil, is it electric? Are you going to be, how does that factor? If you have a house with a very big yard, what's it going to cost to take care of that
Mm,
yard if
all
you're
the
not going to do it
maintenance.
yourself?
Yeah.
And so look at the affordability at the same time you look at the price.
Of course. Of course. No, no, you're right. I mean, once you get the house and you buy the house, you cannot return it anymore after closing, right? I mean, you're stuck with it. And if you can not afford it, that's something you should have thought about before even moving forward. So that's why it's important to have a lender, and especially, the way you advise your clients as well, looking at, this is what you advise them to do based on their financials, right?
So we find a house, it's listed at 850. There are a lot of offers. What's the takeaway? What's the takeaway? How do you what do you what is it? Let's say I'm your client and we're walking into a house that's 850. It looks like there's going to be a lot of activity. Just walk me through what the counseling might sound like.
With the what?
The counseling might count.
Oh, the counseling. So, yeah, no, I mean, first of all, I really want to understand and make sure that the clients, that the buyers really like the house. I will play devil's advocate. I will say, okay, I hear you. We're seeing this beautiful house. You're saying this is great. You want to submit an offer. I remember you told me at the beginning, you wanted to have a pretty nice basement for, to entertain as a family room, and you realize that this house does not have a big basement. The basement is pretty small. How do you feel about that? So I will bring up a couple of things that based on the conversations I've had with them, because sometimes people just fall in love with the house, right? And they're like, oh my God, this is what I want, this is what I want. But I'm like, wait a minute, let's go back to what you've shared with me. Is that okay with you? Is this a deal breaker, or are you okay? I don't want you later on to think, oh, you know what, I rushed into this decision. I should have taken some time to think about it. So me playing devil's advocate, I think, is a good exercise that I do with them as I'm talking to them, as we're looking at the house, and I'm asking, what do you think? How do you like this? How do you feel about that? I ask a lot of questions because I want to hear, and often from my experience, based on the kind of answers I get, I'm like, definitely they really want the house. They really want the house. But again, I have to play that role. So I do that. And then I sometimes even tell them, I say, can we, because most likely we're going to be looking at a couple of houses on any given tour, and I will say, why don't we rank the houses that we just saw? We saw what, maybe 5 6 houses today. Tell me, how would you rank them? And I have each of them do it separately because I don't want them to influence each other. And I'll say, so write it down, and then let's compare our notes, and let's see what you guys thought. And it's very interesting because sometimes what you get here when I do this exercise is not necessarily that they are in agreement. And that really is good because it allows us to have that very honest discussion and say, okay, so you're telling me that this house that you really want to put an offer on, it ranked number one for you, but for you it ranked as number three. So why do you think, or what is it that you like so much about this house, but compared to the other ones, it's not your top number one, but you still want to put an offer on
Mm.
this house? So we have these kind of conversations, and then when my clients decide that this is how they want to move forward and they want to put an offer on, then I'll say, okay, then now is the time. Now we need to see how much you want to offer. That's the number one thing, right? So we have a list price. That's the price, right? The list price. But how much are you willing, and how much are you able to afford to pay for this house? Can you go real crazy or not so crazy?
What's
So
it worth to you?
I'm sorry. Yeah.
What's it worth to you?
Right. What you were saying before, right? How much is this, house worth to you? And also looking at the market, at the recent market history to see, what's the activity in that neighborhood in particular. Are the houses going for crazy prices or not so much? So we'll look at that. And then I start, and then I educate them, as I said before, right? I will tell them, okay, so, you have all of these contingencies, right? You have the appraisal contingency, the mortgage contingency.
You used the term contingency. Tell me what you mean by a contingency and how that impacts the offer and how that impacts the desirability of the offer.
Of course, yes. So a contingency, it's a condition uh, that affects the transaction, right? And when we look at contingencies, by which what I mean is um, a transaction can fall through if one of the contingencies or more contingencies are not met. So, for example, we're looking in real estate, we typically look at a number of contingencies. One would be a mortgage contingency. So if you need a loan to pay for the house, that is a contingency. There is a risk for the seller compared to a cash offer because you might not get. Something might happen. Maybe you lose your employment. Hopefully not, but you may. There is a risk when a seller accepts your offer and your offer is mortgage contingent. You know that's a contingency. So that's one. Another contingency is the appraisal. If the house does not appraise at the purchase price, um, that is another contingency. A third contingency would be an inspection contingency. If the house does not pass the home inspection and buyers and sellers are not able to come to an agreement that's favorable to everybody and that everybody agrees upon, then the contract can be canceled as well.
And
So,
just to be clear, all of these can be managed. So, for
correct,
example, let's say you end up buying this house at 800,000. You might say, we're going to go forward provided that the house appraises at 750 or more.
correct,
So you
correct,
reduce the risk to
correct.
the seller. If you have an inspection contingency, you say, we're only going to make it an issue if there are structural defects. We're not going to look for things that might cause
Cosmetic, anything
a
cosmetic.
cosmetic.
Yeah, yeah,
And by limiting um, the range of the contingency, you make it more appealing.
correct,
So,
correct. I mean, this is really, what the role of the realtor should be. It should be to, it is our job to advise our clients and to make sure that given any contingencies that there might be, that we are making, we're presenting the most attractive offer that minimizes the risk in the eyes of the seller, because otherwise the seller is not going to feel totally comfortable if the offer is not, is basically, if those contingencies are there. So we're trying to minimize, like you said, minimize the contingency, minimize the risk to the sellers. But at the same time, I'm also mindful of my buyers and what they're comfortable doing. So I will advise them, we'll have this conversation and we'll say, do you feel comfortable waiving the full appraisal, or do you prefer to put a cap, like, as you were saying, in the, are you okay, maybe saying, as long as it appraises at this price, I'm okay waiving the appraisal completely. And then you kind of also minimize the amount of money that you need to bring to the table in the event that it does not appraise
hmm.
at the purchase
This is a
price.
good time to raise a critical issue. And over the last, I think it's about 18 months now, prior to, let's say, 1974, realtors were paid by the seller and solely by the seller. The seller paid, whatever the standard commission was in the market, 6%, say,
Yeah.
that the buyer's agent got paid out of that pot of money. And then 18 months ago, that changed, right? Because of the litigation that was going on at the time. Sonia, why should I pay you to be involved in a transaction when I can find the property on Zillow and make an offer without a realtor? What value do you bring to the table?
Well, it's very clear, of course you can go on Zillow, you can go on ChatGPT, you can do whatever you want, right? But at the end of the day, buying a house or selling a house is one of the most important investments that you will make in your lifetime. And so you, like with everything where the advice of an expert in that particular area is, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a doctor, it's the same with a realtor. You need to have someone on your side who is going to guide you and help you navigate the contract, help you navigate all the different risks that you should be aware of, and make sure that you, as a seller, you're not leaving any money on the table, and that you're fully protected in the event that anything might happen, throughout the transaction. Or as a buyer, same thing. You want to make sure that you have that kind of expertise, someone who is really working in your best interest, who is going to help you strategize. And again, not overpay. I mean, if you go by, you mentioned Zillow, if you go by Zillow and you look at those Z estimates, I mean, sometimes people take them seriously, or, we say, look, Zillow does not go into the house. Zillow does not know if you've done any renovations, if you've done an expansion. They have no idea, other than it's just an algorithm. It's a starting point. It gives you an idea. But
Mhm.
would I want to go and make an offer on a house based on the Zillow estimate and say, okay, I'm going to take that? You might be overpaying, as a matter of fact. You might
Right,
be overpaying.
right.
And also, what Zillow is not going to do for you is really have that kind of human interaction with the other side, with the seller side, with the listing agent. And
And
really,
then what happens when something goes wrong,
when
right?
something goes wrong, oh,
Goes
it's
wrong.
always the
I
realtor
mean,
fault.
yeah, I mean, it's so often that I have a client who is now in contract, but she made an offer on two different houses, and the inspector, the first house, it was a waterfront house, and the bulkhead was just ready to fall apart. And the second house, the foundation was compromised. It takes an expert like you to be able to translate the inspection findings and then to negotiate those findings so that you have something real. And that's the difference between having ChatGPT on your side. It's fabulous. I use it all day long. But boy,
Not for a transaction where there is
yeah,
money involved.
yeah.
I don't think ChatGPT is there yet. It might, I don't know, maybe at some point, who knows, in the future. But at this point, I really think that, you need to have a human person advising you. Like, as I said, whether it's an attorney, whether it's a financial advisor, a CPA, you want someone who really, that you trust, who has the experience and the expertise, and can guide you and can say, look, these are, and I love that about what I do. I love to give people, all my clients, options. I tell them, look, you have three options here, and these are the pros and the cons of each option. So I can help you, you know um, understand, each of the three options, and I can help you make an informed decision that you are going to be comfortable with. I'm not the kind of realtor that will say, oh, definitely you must do this or you must do that. No, because everybody's different. Everybody has, as you know, you have the same thing, most likely, I can imagine. Everybody's different, and everybody has a different level of comfort, tolerance, risk tolerance, comfort with budget, comfort with certain things. We were talking about, before, like certain things that the house has or doesn't have. Everybody's very different. And I like to be very respectful of that and very mindful, because at the end of the day, really, I am here not to tell you, but to advise you
Yeah. And
and
I,
educate you.
and from what I've seen, you're a fierce negotiator.
Yes.
And
I love
so
negotiating.
you as so talking to our audience for a minute, you as a buyer need to know what you need. I'm working with a fellow right now who is in sales, and he negotiates all day long. And so, does he really need somebody who's a fierce negotiator? No, hell, most people couldn't hold a candle to this guy on negotiations. But when it comes to um, advice and understanding, because in his particular case, we just got a $22,000 price reduction because of
Yeah,
the condition. And that was made possible because he had an excellent realtor who translated the both to him and to the seller's people, translated the inspection report back, and they said, "Okay, yeah, we'll meet you at this number,"
yeah,
and we really saved the deal because everyone was you have whatever you save by not having a realtor on the buy side
yeah,
or on the sell side when you look at, oh, I'm going to pay this person, 3% of $1 million. Are they really worth it? They're worth it.
yeah,
That's really the answer.
yeah. No, thank you. No, it's, you know what? Everybody's called a realtor, and, like in each and every industry, there is always a bad apple somewhere. But I will say that a professional realtor, we have a fiduciary duty to our clients. We have one. And that's really what guides the work that I do every single day. I'm there to help them, to guide them, to educate them, and to make sure that this is the house that they are going to be happy with. Is it going to be the perfect house? Probably not, because the perfect house does not really exist. There is always something. There's always something that the house may not have. But I always say, as long as it comes as close as possible to what you really have in mind, we're good. We're
Yeah.
good. Yeah.
I'll just circle back and remind people that Sonia is awarded the Real Trends Award as being one of the top 1.5% of the realtors in the country. And what I'll say is you're going to pay the realtor the same amount, whether they're a rookie or whether they're a Sonia Margalef. And if for my money, I would only work with Sonia. So
Oh, thank you so much.
this
Same
has
here.
been
Same
great. This has
here.
been the time has just flown, and
Thank you.
thank you for taking the time to go through this with us. Again, Sonia's information will be posted on the site, and I really so much appreciate your time and your insights. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dave. Thank you for having me and for this insightful interview and conversation. Really, it's wonderful to, to chat with you and also get your take on a lot of the stuff that's happening in our market. So thank you.
So this has been the Mortgages Made Easy podcast. If you found this of value, please take a moment to like it or to subscribe. I do different kinds of content. I do shorts every week. I'll put out a rate watch. I'll also do what I call the Summit Minute, where I talk about specific issues. And then every once or twice a month, I'll have an interview with an industry expert like Sonia to talk about issues of substance. And thank you again for joining us.
My pleasure.